Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're diving into one of history's grittiest survival challenges. Picture this. You're about to wake up in Victorian London, but not in some fancy townhouse with servants and tea service. No, you're opening your eyes in a damp, freezing attic where the walls are so thin you can hear rats gnawing through your neighbor's floorboards. You're a factory girl. And honestly, you probably won't make it past 40 if you're lucky. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments below. Now, close your eyes and listen. Your eyes flutter open in the pre-dawn darkness. It's 4:30 in the morning. Though you wouldn't know it, there's no clock in your family's cramped attic room. The church bells haven't even rung yet, and what wakes you is the bone-deep cold seeping through the thin blanket you share with your 3 younger sisters. Their small bodies press against yours on the straw-stuffed mattress that's seen better days. Probably sometime during King George's reign. The mattress itself is a luxury, relatively speaking. Many of your neighbors sleep directly on wooden boards. You've got straw. Even if it's moldy and harbors more insects than a naturalist's collection box, something scurries across your foot, probably just another rat. They're so common here that your youngest sister has named the fattest one Lord Whiskers. You'd laugh if you had the energy. Your breath forms little clouds in the frigid air. Ice crystals have formed on the inside of the single window. If you can call that grimy piece of glass a window, through it, you can barely make out the forest of chimney pots already belching smoke into London's perpetually grey skies. The mainstream historical fact that everyone knows is that Victorian London was the world's largest city, housing over 6 million souls by 1900. What they don't tell you is that most of those souls were crammed into spaces that would make modern prison cells look spacious. Here's something quirky that might surprise you. Some Victorian poor actually preferred winter to summer, despite the cold. Why? Because in summer, the stench from the Thames, basically an open sewer, became so overwhelming that people would vomit just walking outside. At least winter frost kept the worst smells at bay. Small mercies, right? You shift slightly, trying not to wake your sisters. The youngest, Mary, coughs in her sleep, a wet, rattling sound that's been getting worse all week. Historians still argue whether the notorious consumption, tuberculosis, killed more Victorians than all industrial accidents combined. But lying here listening to that cough, you don't need statistics, and you've already lost 2 siblings to the White Plague. Your back aches from yesterday's 14-hour shift at the textile factory. Every joint protests as you slowly extract yourself from the tangle of thin limbs and threadbare fabric. The floor is ice cold against your bare feet. Shoes are for wearing outside only. Can't waste good leather on indoor comfort. As you stand, your head spins slightly. Dinner last night was thin gruel and a crust of bread 2 days past stale. Your stomach clenches, reminding you that breakfast won't be much better. But first, you need to empty the chamber pot, the only toilet facility your family has. The shared privy in the courtyard is 3 flights down and likely frozen solid anyway. The floorboards creak under your weight as you navigate the darkness. You know every loose board, every protruding nail by heart. Step wrong, and you'll either wake the entire building or put your foot through rotted wood into the apartment below. Mrs. O'Brien downstairs has already complained twice this month about ceiling dust falling into her soup pot, as if her watery cabbage brew could get any worse. You reach for your dress hanging on a nail by the door. It's the same brown wool dress you wore yesterday, and the day before that. And every day for the past 8 months, the fabric is stiff with dried sweat and factory grime. But at least it's yours. Your mother saved for 2 years to buy the material, and you spent another month's worth of evenings sewing it by candlelight. The mainstream fact everyone learns in school is that Victorian women's fashion involved elaborate corsets and bustles. What they don't mention is that working-class women like you wore the same dress until it literally fell apart, then patched it with whatever fabric scraps you could scavenge. You pull the dress over your chemise, the only undergarment you own. No corset for you. Those are for women who don't need to bend over machinery all day. Besides, a proper corset costs more than you make in 3 months. Instead, you wrap a strip of cloth around your chest for support. It's not comfortable, but comfort is a luxury you can't afford. The water basin sits on a rickety table near the window. You break the thin layer of ice with your knuckles. Ouch. That never gets easier. And splash the frigid water on your face. The shock makes you gasp. But at least you're fully awake now. You run wet fingers through your hair, trying to smooth down the tangles. No time for proper washing. That's a Sunday luxury. And even then, you'll be sharing bath water with the entire family. Here's a quirky detail. Victorian poor women often rub their cheeks with red flannel or even brick dust to add colour to their pallid complexions. Can't afford rouge? No problem. Just grab a piece of broken brick from the construction site down the street. Nothing says healthy glow like literal building materials on your face, and you twist your hair into a tight bun, securing it with 3 precious pins. Loose hair around factory machinery means scalping, or worse. You've seen it happen. Just last month, young Bessie from the spinning room got her braid caught in the gears. The screaming lasted for what felt like hours. Though it was probably only minutes, she survived. But now wears a cap to hide her mangled scalp. The factory owner docked her wages for the production delay her accident caused. Your boots wait by the door. Newspaper stuffed inside to absorb moisture. You shake them out carefully. Sometimes mice nest in them overnight. The leather is cracked and the soles worn thin. But they'll last another few months if you're careful. You wrap strips of cloth around your feet before sliding them into the boots. These makeshift socks will help prevent the worst blisters, though your feet will still be screaming by evening. Historians still argue whether the Industrial Revolution improved or destroyed working-class women's lives. Sure, factory work paid better than domestic service, but at what cost? Your grandmother worked as a seamstress from home, setting her own hours. You work under the factory clock's tyranny. Every minute regulated, every break monitored. You button your dress with fingers already stiff from cold. 2 buttons are missing, replaced with bits of string tied through the holes. Fashion. The cuffs are frayed beyond repair. But you've sewn them with black thread so many times they look almost decorative. Almost. A quick glance in the cracked mirror propped against the wall shows a face you barely recognize anymore. At 19, you look closer to 30. Dark circles ring your eyes. Your cheeks are hollow, and your skin has that greyish pallor that marks every factory girl. You pinch your cheeks hard, bringing a momentary flush. There. Now you look merely exhausted instead of half dead. You creep down the narrow stairs. Each step a calculated risk. The building houses 43 families, and everyone's trying to get to work without waking the babies or the night shift workers just getting home. The stairwell reeks of boiled cabbage, human waste, and that particular eau de poverty that comes from too many unwashed bodies in too small a space. Your empty stomach lurches. But hey, at least you're saving money on breakfast. The communal kitchen is already crowded with bleary-eyed women heating water over the single coal stove. You wait your turn, stamping your feet to keep warm, while Mrs. Murphy argues with Mrs. Chen about whose pot was there first. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian London was incredibly multicultural, with immigrants from Ireland, China, Eastern Europe, and beyond. What textbooks skip is how these diverse communities were crammed together in slums, fighting over resources as scarce as stove access. Finally, it's your turn. You heat water in the dented pot your mother left you, one of your few possessions that hasn't been pawned. Into it goes your breakfast, a handful of oats that might be 30% actual oats and 70% sawdust. If the color is any indication, the shopkeeper swears it's pure. But then again, he also swears that grey meat is just well aged. While the gruel heats, you fish out your bread from yesterday. It's rock hard now. But dunked in hot water, it becomes almost edible. You eye the small pat of dripping, rendered animal fat that you've been saving. Better save it for Sunday. A little grease makes anything taste better, even disappointment. Here's something quirky. Historians have uncovered some Victorian poor would chew coffee beans when they couldn't afford to brew actual coffee. The caffeine hit helped them stay alert during those brutal factory shifts. Others chewed tobacco for the same reason, though that led to other problems, like jaw cancer. Pick your poison. Literally, a rat scurries across the kitchen floor, bold as brass. Misses. O'Brien throws her shoe at it, but misses, getting fatter every day. They are, she mutters. You privately agree. The rats here eat better than the humans. At least they can digest the stuff that falls through the floorboards. You gulp down your gruel, trying not to taste it. The consistency is somewhere between wallpaper paste and despair. Your stomach cramps immediately, whether from hunger or the questionable quality of the oats. You can't tell. Either way, this needs to fuel you through 7 hours until your 20-minute lunch break. Your younger brother Tom stumbles into the kitchen, still half asleep, at 12. He's already working at the match factory and his fingers are stained yellow from the phosphorus, and he's lost 2 teeth to phossy jaw. But the match factory pays 2 shillings more per week than the textile mill, and your family needs every penny. Save me some, he asks. Eyeing your pot, you pour half your remaining gruel into his bowl. Your stomach protests. But Tom's still growing. Well, trying to grow. Historians still argue whether Victorian working-class children were actually getting shorter with each generation due to malnutrition, or if that's just poor record-keeping. Looking at Tom's thin frame, you have your own theories. The factory whistle sounds in the distance, 15 minutes until work starts. You quickly wash your pot in the bucket of grey water that's been used by 6 people already this morning. Waste not. Want not. Even if that means everyone shares the same exciting blend of grease and grime. You wrap your thin shawl around your shoulders. It's wool, technically, though so worn you can see through it in places. Your mother knitted it years ago, and you've darned it so many times it's more repair than original. But it's better than nothing against the December cold. Tell father I'll bring home bread tonight. You say to Tom, knowing full well father probably won't emerge from his gin-soaked stupor until well past noon. Tom nods, understanding passing between you. You're the real head of household now. Have been since father discovered that gin temporarily erases the pain of his factory-crushed hand. The factory looms before you, like a brick monster belching black smoke into the dawn sky. 6 stories of windows glow with gaslight, and you can already hear the rhythmic pounding of machinery inside. Your workplace. Grimshaw & Sons Textile Manufactory. Employer of 800 souls. Destroyer of probably twice that many. The mainstream fact every history book mentions is that textile factories were the backbone of Britain's Industrial Revolution. What they leave out is that this backbone was built on the actual broken backs of workers like you. You file through the gates with hundreds of other women, all dressed in similar drab browns and greys. The overseer, Mr. Blackstone, stands at the entrance with his pocket watch, noting latecomers arrive 1 minute past 5 a.m. and you lose an hour's wages. Arrive 5 minutes late, and you might find yourself locked out entirely. Your position filled by one of the dozen desperate women waiting outside the gates each morning. Keep moving. Ladies, Blackstone barks. Though ladies drips with such sarcasm, it might as well be an insult. His eyes linger too long on the younger girls, and you instinctively pull your shawl tighter. Everyone knows to avoid being alone with Blackstone. Well, everyone except new girls like poor Lucy last month, who learned the hard way that reporting harassment to the factory owner just gets you fired for moral turpitude. Inside, the heat hits you like a physical wall. The machinery generates enormous heat, and the windows are nailed shut to maintain humidity for the cotton fibers. In summer, girls regularly faint. In winter, you go from freezing to sweating in minutes. You hang your shawl on your designated hook, number 247, and hurry to your station. Your job is operating a power loom, one of 40 in this room alone. The noise is deafening. Imagine being trapped inside a giant's music box while he's having a seizure. You've already lost some hearing, and you're one of the lucky ones. Old Martha, who's worked here 30 years, is completely deaf now. She reads lips and communicates through an elaborate system of hand gestures that would make modern sign language look primitive. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some factory girls stuff their ears with chewed paper or candle wax to protect their hearing. Others use cotton waste, which was strictly forbidden since it was technically stealing from the company. Getting caught meant instant dismissal. But slowly going deaf meant a lifetime of silence. Pick your poison. The power loom is a temperamental beast. You have to constantly watch for broken threads, tie them back together with lightning-fast fingers, and keep the shuttle moving smoothly. Take your eyes off it for 1 second and crack! The shuttle flies out like a wooden missile. They call them kissing shuttles because they tend to hit people in the mouth, knocking out teeth. How romantic. Your fingers fly across the threads, muscle memory taking over. Each loom operator manages 2 machines, walking back and forth between them in an endless dance. You'll walk about 15 miles today without ever leaving this room. The floor is slick with cotton fibers and machine oil, making every step treacherous. Sarah, 2 rows over, slipped last week and caught her arm in the gears. She's still alive, but won't be playing piano anytime soon. Not that any of you own pianos. Historians still argue whether the factory system represented progress or regression for women workers. Sure, you earn your own wages, but at what cost? Your grandmother spun thread at home, working at her own pace. You work at the machine's pace, and the machine never tires, never slows, never shows mercy. The overlooker prowls between the rows, watching for any sign of slacking. Mr. Grimshaw believes in the efficiency of terror, and his overlookers enforce it enthusiastically. You see him approaching and speed up your movements. Even though your shoulders already scream from repetitive motion, he pauses behind you, so close you can smell the tobacco on his breath. Faster, 247. He growls. I've seen snails move quicker. You bite your tongue, literally, to keep from responding. Backtalk means fines. Too many fines mean dismissal. Instead, you nod and somehow push your aching body to work even faster. The overlooker moves on to terrorize someone else, and you allow yourself 1 deep breath before returning to your mechanical ballet. The factory clock strikes noon, its brass bell barely audible over the machinery's roar. Finally, lunch break. Your hands are raw from constantly retying broken threads, and your back feels like someone's been using it for knife-throwing practice. 20 minutes to rest. Eat, and pretend you're human again. The machines wind down to a stop, and the sudden relative quiet makes your ears ring. You join the stream of women heading to the lunchroom, really just a corner of the factory floor, with some rough benches. No leaving the building during breaks. Mr. Grimshaw doesn't trust his workers not to run off, as if any of you have anywhere better to go. You unwrap your lunch from its brown paper. 2 cold potatoes and a slice of bread that's more mold than grain. Gourmet dining at its finest. "Did you hear about Agnes?" whispers Fanny, sliding onto the bench beside you. She works the spinning frames 2 floors up. Lost her thumb yesterday. Got caught in the gears when she was clearing a jam. This is standard lunchtime conversation. A morbid roll call of the week's casualties. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian factories were dangerous. What they don't capture is how normalized the violence became. You discuss severed fingers the way modern people discuss weather. "Which hand?" you ask, biting into your potato. "It tastes like sadness and dirt." "Right, she's left-handed though. So Mr. Grimshaw says she can keep working." Fanny shakes her head. "Half wages. Of course, since she'll be slower now." Here's a quirky detail that'll curl your toes. Some factory workers developed superstitions about which body parts to sacrifice to the machines. Lose a left pinky? That's good luck for your family. Lose a right thumb? Someone's gonna die within the year. When you're powerless against the machinery, you create whatever meaning you can. You notice young Millie isn't eating her lunch again. At 13, she's one of the youngest in your section, and her family's even poorer than yours. She's staring at her piece of bread like it might multiply if she watches hard enough. "Split my potato with me," you offer. "I'm not that hungry." Your stomach immediately calls you a liar, but Millie's grateful smile makes the lie worth it. She breaks her bread in half to share with you in return. It's green with mold, but you've eaten worse. At least mold is technically food, unlike the sawdust in this morning's porridge. The conversation turns to gossip about who's pregnant. Usually catastrophic news in a factory. Who's courting whom? Slim pickings among the factory boys. And who's planning to try their luck at the new factory opening across town? The grass is always greener, even when all grass is basically coal dust. I heard they've got safety guards on all the machines, says Ellen hopefully. I heard they pay even less than Grimshaw, counters Fanny, and the overseer's got wandering hands worse than Blackstone. Historians still argue whether factory work provided women with unprecedented independence or simply replaced domestic servitude with industrial slavery, sitting here with your fellow wage slaves. Comparing mutilations and mouldy lunches, you know which side of that debate you'd fall on. My sister says there's good money in service, pipes up young Millie. The Ashworths need a new scullery maid, £3 a year plus board. Everyone goes quiet. £3 a year is less than half what you make at the factory, but room and board means guaranteed food and shelter. It's a devil's bargain. Trade your freedom for security. Plus, everyone knows what service can mean for pretty young girls in wealthy households, at least at the factory. You can go home at night. The bell rings. Ending break time. 20 minutes gone in a blink. You quickly use the privy, a row of overflowing buckets behind a thin curtain, holding your breath the entire time. The mainstream fact about Victorian sanitation being terrible doesn't begin to capture the reality of sharing toilet facilities with 400 women who all have 20 minutes to use them. Back to your loom, back to the noise, back to the endless repetition. Your potato and half of Millie's mouldy bread sit like stones in your stomach. 5 more hours to go. You flex your fingers, trying to work out the stiffness, and notice the small cuts from the threads have started bleeding again. By evening, your hands will look like you've been fighting with a very angry cat, a cat made of cotton and capitalism. The afternoon shift stretches before you like a punishment designed by someone who really hates human beings. The lunch potato has long since dissolved into nothing, and your stomach keeps making sounds that would embarrass a dying whale. But the looms don't care about your hunger. They demand constant attention, constant movement, constant sacrifice. Your shoulders burn with each reach to rethread the heddles. The repetitive motion has created permanent knots in your muscles that feel like rocks under your skin. Some of the older women can't lift their arms above their heads anymore. Decades of the same motion has literally reshaped their bodies. You try not to think about what you'll look like in 20 years, assuming you last that long. The cotton dust is thicker in the afternoon. It hangs in the air like snow that never settles, getting into your lungs with every breath. You've developed the factory cough. Everyone has. A dry, hacking thing that produces phlegm the color of old cotton. The mainstream fact is that many factory workers developed respiratory diseases. What they don't tell you is that coughing up cotton fibers becomes so normal. You start judging the quality of your day by the color of what you hack up. Machine down, someone shouts from the next row. Everyone freezes. A broken machine means lost production. Lost production means the overseer looking for someone to blame. You keep your head down, fingers moving mechanically, trying to become invisible. Sure enough, here comes Mr. Hartley, red-faced and looking for a target. Sabotage, he roars, examining the broken gear. Which one of you she-devils did this? Nobody answers. Nobody ever does. Hartley grabs the nearest girl, poor Anne, and shakes her like a terrier with a rat on. Was it you, trying to slow production, support the unions? Here's something quirky but true. Some workers did commit sabotage, throwing wooden shoes called sabots into the machinery. That's actually where the word sabotage comes from. But mostly, machines broke because they were pushed beyond capacity, maintained with spit and prayers, and operated by exhausted workers who could barely see straight. Anne sobs a denial, and Hartley eventually releases her with a shove that sends her sprawling. Back to work, all of you, and Anne's wages are docked for the repair cost. The unfairness burns in your chest, but you swallow it down with all the other unfairnesses. The pile must be getting pretty big in there by now. Sometimes you imagine it like a volcano, building pressure. One day it'll explode, but not today. Today, you need the 7 shillings you'll earn. Today, you keep your head down and your fingers moving. By 3 o'clock, your vision starts to blur. The threads swim before your eyes like tiny snakes. This is the dangerous time. When accidents happen, you blink hard, pinch your arms, anything to stay alert. The girl at station 249 isn't so lucky. You hear the scream before you see what happened. Her sleeve got caught in the gears, pulling her arm in up to the elbow before someone hits the emergency stop. The overseer curses the production delay while someone runs for the factory nurse. Really just an older woman who knows how to tie a tourniquet. You want to help, but leaving your station means fines, so you keep working, trying to block out the whimpering, the sound of tearing fabric as they cut her dress away from the machine. Historians still argue whether industrial accidents were inevitable or preventable. Standing here, watching them carry away another casualty, while the overseer calculates lost profits, you know the answer. Every safety measure costs money. Every guardrail reduces efficiency. And efficiency is God in Grimshaw's temple of industry. The afternoon wears on. Your fingers move without conscious thought now. Muscle memory taking over while your mind drifts. You compose letters you'll never send. Have conversations with people you'll never meet. Imagine lives you'll never live. It's a special kind of torture. Your body enslaved while your mind runs free, taunting you with what-ifs and might-have-beens. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. The light outside the grimy windows starts to fade. Not that you can see much anyway. The gas lights flicker on. casting dancing shadows that make the machinery look even more monstrous. Your back has passed through pain into a kind of numbness that's probably not good. Your fingers are definitely bleeding now, leaving little red spots on the white cotton. You hope the quality inspectors don't notice. Blood-stained fabric means wage deductions. 6 o'clock finally arrives with the wheeze of the steam whistles. The machines grind to a halt, and for a moment, the silence is so profound you can hear your own heartbeat. Then comes the shuffle of 800 tired feet heading for the exits. Another day survived. Time to collect your wages and pretend this is a life worth living. The pay office is a small cage near the main entrance, where Mr. Grimshaw's clerk sits behind iron bars like a banker guarding the crown jewels. You queue with the other women, everyone doing mental arithmetic. 7 shillings for the week, minus 2 pence for being 30 seconds late on Tuesday, minus 3 for that broken thread the inspector found, minus a penny for using too much oil on your machine. The deductions always seem to grow while the base wage stays the same. Number 247. The clerk calls out in his nasal voice. You step forward, and he slides 4 shillings and 9 pence across the counter. That's not right. You protest. Should be at least 5 and 6. New deduction, he says without looking up. Window tax. Government's charging the factory more, so it comes from wages. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian England had numerous bizarre taxes, including one on the windows. What they don't mention is how factory owners passed every single cost onto their workers. Taxes, repairs, even the owner's gambling debts. Somehow, they all became wage deductions. You want to argue, but there's a line of tired women behind you, and the clerk's already calling the next number. You pocket your coins, each one representing hours of pain, and head for the exit. At least you got paid. Mary from the spinning room wasn't so lucky. Fired on the spot for falling asleep standing up. 12 years of service vanished in an instant. Outside, the December evening is already dark. Gas lamps cast pools of sickly yellow light that do little to illuminate the treacherous cobblestones. You pull your thin shawl tight and join the river of workers flowing into the streets. Time to navigate the urban jungle that is Victorian London after dark. Here's a quirky fact that would amuse you if you weren't so exhausted. Victorian police recommended that women carry pins in their mouths when walking alone at night. The theory was you could spit them at attackers, because nothing says effective self-defense like expectoration-based warfare. You've tried it. Mostly, you just end up swallowing pins. The streets are an obstacle course of horse droppings, overflowing gutters, and suspicious puddles that might be water but probably aren't. You've developed a sixth sense for avoiding the worst of it, though your boots still squelch with every step. A rat the size of a small cat scurries across your path, and you barely flinch. City wildlife. Oi, factory girl. You don't turn around. Nothing good ever follows that greeting. You walk faster, but the footsteps behind you speed up too. Your hand closes around the hatpin in your pocket, your one actual weapon. The police might recommend pins in the mouth, but a 6-inch steel pin in the hand works better. Just want to talk. Love, buy you a drink? Still walking. The pub on the corner glows invitingly, but you know better. Accepting drinks leads to expectations, and expectations lead to situations where that hatpin becomes necessary. Besides, you need every penny for rent and food. Gin is for people who've given up, like your father. Historians still argue whether Victorian streets were actually more dangerous than modern cities, or if the era's moral panic exaggerated the threats. Walking here with some drunk dock worker following you, debating whether to run or stand your ground. You don't need academic analysis. The threat feels plenty real. You duck into Mrs. Chen's laundry, where the steam and harsh soap smell hit you like a wall. The drunk won't follow you in here. Mrs. Chen has a reputation for violence that makes factory overseers look gentle. She nods at you from behind mountains of dirty linens, understanding your situation without words. This is how women survive here. An informal network of safe spaces and silent agreements. After a few minutes, you peek outside. The coast is clear. You slip out and hurry toward home. 4 shillings and 9pence weighing heavy in your pocket. It's not enough. It's never enough. But it's what you've got. And tomorrow, you'll get up and do it all again. Because what's the alternative? The streets between the factory and your lodging house are a maze of danger and desperation. Flower sellers hawk wilted violets to men buying apologies. Match girls with phosphorus-yellowed skin beg for pennies. And everywhere, the unfortunate women who've chosen, or been forced into, the one profession that pays better than factory work, and you keep your eyes down, pretending not to see your former workmate Elizabeth adjusting her bodice under a street lamp. Spare a penny. Miss? A child materializes from an alley, so covered in grime you can't tell if it's a boy or girl. The fingers extended toward you are black with coal dust, a mudlark. Then, one of the children who scavenge in the Thames mud at low tide. Looking for anything sellable, you fish out a halfpenny, knowing you can't afford it, but unable to walk past. The child snatches it and vanishes back into the shadows before you can change your mind. That's your lunch tomorrow gone. But at least the kid might eat tonight. The mainstream fact everyone knows is that Victorian London had thousands of street children. What they don't tell you is how they survived. Eating rats, sleeping in shifts in doorways, selling their bodies when desperate enough. A fight spills out of the Crown and Anchor pub ahead. 2 men grapple in the street while onlookers place bets. You cross to the other side, stepping carefully around a woman being violently sick in the gutter. The smell of gin and vomit mingles with the ever-present stench of horse manure and human waste. Ah, the glamorous city life. Knives sharpened, scissors ground. The knife grinder's cry echoes off the buildings. He set up his wheel right in the middle of the pavement, forcing everyone to squeeze past. His monkey, a mangy creature in a tiny red jacket, holds out a cup for coins. Even the animals here have to work for their supper. You turn down Brick Lane, where the Jewish refugees have set up shop. The smell of baking bread makes your stomach clench with hunger. Through lit windows, you see families gathered around tables, sharing meals that look like feasts compared to your planned supper. Here's something quirky. Some of these refugees fled pogroms with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Yet within months, they've created businesses and communities that put native Londoners to shame. There's a lesson there about resilience, but you're too tired to pass it. A hansom cab rattles past, splashing filthy water across your skirts. The well-dressed couple inside don't even notice. To them, you're just part of the street furniture. As noteworthy as a lamppost, you shake your skirts futilely. The mud is already drying into a crust that'll take ages to brush out later. Read your fortune. Dearie? An old woman grabs your sleeve with surprising strength. Her face is a map of wrinkles, and her eyes are milky with cataracts. Only a penny to know your future. I already know my future. You say, trying to pull away gently. It looks exactly like today. She cackles, revealing 3 remaining teeth. Ah, but you've got a surprise coming. I see it in your... Aura? She squints at the air around your head. Yes, definitely. A tall, dark stranger will want money I don't have. You finish. Thanks, but I'll save my penny. Historians still argue whether Victorian fortune tellers were cynical frauds or genuinely believed in their abilities. standing here with this old woman still clutching your sleeve. You suspect it's neither. She's just another desperate soul trying to survive by selling hope to the hopeless. You finally extract yourself and hurry on. The streetlights are fewer here, and the shadows deeper. Every doorway could hide a thief. Every alley could conceal worse. You walk in the middle of the street when possible, dodging the worst of the muck but staying away from grabbing range. A constable strolls past, truncheon swinging, whistling off-key. He tips his helmet at a well-dressed lady, ignores the prostitute propositioning a customer 10 feet away, and gives you a suspicious look that suggests being poor and female after dark is somehow criminal. You walk faster, knowing that causing a disturbance is whatever a constable says it is, and the fine would wipe out your week's wages. Finally, your lodging house looms before you, 5 stories of crumbling brick and broken dreams. But it's home, sort of. You've survived another commute through London's urban wilderness. Now for the next challenge, making 4 shillings and 9pence stretch to cover all of life's necessities. Spoiler alert, it won't. The market on Whitechapel Road is in full swing despite the late hour. Costers hawk their wares by gaslight, each trying to outshout the others. Apples, last of the day, half price. But half price is still more than you can afford. And those apples look suspiciously brown anyway. You clutch your 4 shillings and 9pence. Already doing the depressing mathematics. Rent is 3 shillings a week, leaving you 1 and 9 for everything else. Food, coal, candles, and somehow saving for new boots before these ones completely disintegrate. You approach the vegetable seller, a woman with arms like ham hocks and a face that suggests she's eaten more merchandise than she's sold. Her carrots are limp, her potatoes sprouting eyes, and her cabbages look like they've already been digested once. Perfect for your budget. What'll you have? Love, she asks, eyeing your factory-stained dress with the practiced gaze of someone who can calculate your worth to the halfpenny. What can I get for 6pence? She laughs, a sound like gravel in a butter churn. 2 pounds of potatoes, a turnip, and I'll throw in these carrot tops for free. She holds up some wilted greens that might have been attached to carrots sometime last week. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian poor survived on monotonous diets of bread and potatoes. What they don't capture is the soul-crushing negotiation required for every purchase, the constant calculating of calories per penny, the shameful gratitude for other people's scraps. The potatoes are sprouting, you point out, hoping for a better deal. Sprouting means they're still fresh enough to grow. She counters. That's practically farm-to-table dining. That is. Here's a quirky detail that would be funny if it weren't your life. Victorian poor developed elaborate recipes for making spoiled food edible. Sour milk became cheese. Green potatoes were aged for flavor. And mold was nature's seasoning. When starvation is the alternative, you get creative with definitions. You hand over your 6pence and collect your bounty. Next stop, the butcher's, where the real horror show begins, and the window display features cuts of meat in various stages of decomposition, arranged to hide the worst bits. Flies buzz around despite the cold, and the smell hits you before you even open the door. Closing soon, the butcher bellows, cleaver in hand. Final prices. Final prices means the stuff that won't last another day. You scan the offerings. Grey beef that might have mooed during Victoria's coronation. Some unidentifiable organs. And what he optimistically calls soup bones, but look suspiciously like they've already been sucked clean. Got any lights? You ask. Lights are lungs, usually from sheep, and the absolute cheapest meat available. Even poor people's dogs turn their noses up at lights, but boiled long enough with those sprouting potatoes, they'll fill your stomach. 3pence, he says, wrapping a grey, spongy mass in yesterday's newspaper. The headline reads something about parliamentary reform, fitting that political promises should end up wrapping organ meat, eh? Your remaining money goes to a penny candle. You'll sit in the dark most evenings to conserve it. A small portion of dripping from the oil shop. Rancid, but fat is fat. And a stale loaf from the baker who's trying to clear inventory. 1 shilling and threepence spent on a week's worth of food. Oh, miss. A small boy tugs at your skirt. Buy some matches. Only a penny a box. You recognize him. Tommy from down the street. His fingers show the telltale signs of phossy jaw developing. And his mother died last month of the same. Historians still argue whether match factories knew about the phosphorus poisoning when they employed children. Looking at Tommy's rotting jawline, you know they knew and didn't care. I've no money left. Tommy, you say gently. Please. Miss, haven't sold any today. Master'll beat me if I come back with full pockets. You look at your pathetic pile of groceries, then at his desperate face and, with a sigh that comes from your soul, you unknot your handkerchief and extract a precious penny, saved for next week's rent. Here, but don't tell anyone I had extra money. Yeah? He grins, showing blackened gums, and presses a box of matches into your hands before scampering off. You've just made next week harder to make this week bearable for someone else. It's the kind of mathematics they don't teach in schools. The algebra of desperation, where somehow having less than nothing still means giving something away. Back at the lodging house, you climb the 4 flights to your family's room, groceries clutched against your chest. Each step is an effort. Your legs feel like they're made of lead, and the stairwell spins slightly from exhaustion and hunger. The smell of boiled cabbage from every doorway makes your empty stomach churn. At least 20 families are cooking the same meal tonight. Victorian variety at its finest. You push open the door to find chaos, as usual. Your mother sits in the corner, mending a shirt by the light of a single candle. Her fingers are gnarled from years of needlework, but they still move with mechanical precision. Your father occupies his usual spot by the empty fireplace, staring at nothing. A gin bottle cradled like a baby. Your 3 sisters are attempting to clean, Mary sweeping with a broom that has more handle than bristles, while the twins wash dishes in water that's the color of weak tea. About time, your mother says, without looking up. Thought you'd run off with some fellow. Yes, mother, because factory girls covered in cotton dust and blood are exactly what men are looking for. You reply, setting down your packages. I brought food. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian working-class women often worked double shifts, factory by day, housework by night. What they don't mention is that this housework was performed in conditions that would make a medieval peasant weep. No running water, no proper cleaning supplies, and everything covered in a layer of soot that returns minutes after you wipe it away. Is that meat? Little Mary abandons her sweeping to peer at your packages. At 8, she's already thin as a rail, with the hollow eyes that mark every child in this building. Lights, you admit, but meat's meat. Your mother sighs, but starts unwrapping the packages. Get water heating. Sarah. Anne. Clear the table, whatever that is on it. The table is covered in something. Could be food residue. Could be industrial waste your father tracked in. In this light, it's hard to tell. Here's something quirky. Victorian poor often cleaned with ash from the fireplace mixed with grease to make a primitive soap. When you can't afford actual cleaning products, you get creative. Sometimes the cure is worse than the disease, but at least you feel like you're doing something. You haul the water bucket to the communal pump in the courtyard, waiting your turn behind Mrs. O'Brien and her 6 children. The pump handle is frozen, requiring several women to work together to break it free. The water that finally spurts out is brown and smells of rust. But it's wet, and that's what matters. Heard young Molly's pregnant. Mrs. O'Brien gossips while you wait. Father's the overseer at the match factory. Everyone makes sympathetic noises. Pregnancy for an unmarried factory girl means dismissal, disgrace, and probably the workhouse, unless she visits the woman on Dorset Street who helps girls in trouble. But half of those girls don't survive the help. Back upstairs. You pour the water into the dented pot and add the lights, potatoes, and turnip. The smell is unique, like death warmed over, then cooled, then warmed again. Your mother adds a precious pinch of salt and some wild herbs she gathered from cracks in the pavement. Urban foraging, another skill the history books skip. While the pot boils, you tackle the mending pile. Your dress needs patching, again. Father's work shirt has more holes than fabric, and the twins have somehow managed to tear their shared petticoat completely in half. You thread a needle by candlelight, squinting in the dimness. The mainstream fact about Victorian needlework being a feminine accomplishment doesn't mention that for poor women. It was survival. Can't mend. Then you're naked. Simple as that. Tell us about your day. Mary asks, settling at your feet. She loves stories. Probably because fiction has to be better than reality. Historians still argue whether the Victorian emphasis on family values applied to the working class. Sitting here, surrounded by your exhausted family in a freezing room that smells of poverty and boiled organs, you know the answer. Family is all you have. It's not about values, it's about survivals. You share your warmth, your food, your stories, because alone you'd all be dead within a week. Well, you begin, trying to make industrial accidents sound like adventures. Today a shuttle flew right past my ear, sounded like an angry bee the size of a cat. Your fingers work the needle, while your voice spins tales. And somehow, despite everything, this almost feels like home. The soup is ready. Though calling it soup is generous, it's more like organ-flavored water, with chunks of potato floating like pale islands of disappointment. But it's hot. And after 14 hours in the factory, hot food is a miracle regardless of taste. You ladle it into the collection of cracked bowls and chipped cups that serve as your dinnerware, making sure Mary gets the biggest potato. Growing children need food more than grown women need dignity. Father, you call softly. Supper's ready. He doesn't respond, just takes another pull from his gin bottle. Mother's jaw tightens, but she says nothing. What's to say? The mainstream historical fact is that gin was the scourge of Victorian working classes. What they don't explain is why. When your body is broken from labour and your spirit is crushed by poverty, gin offers temporary escape. It's medicine for pain that has no cure. You all gather around the rickety table except Father, who remains in his chair, nursing his bottle and his bitterness. The twins say grace, a quick mumble thanking God for blessings that are hard to identify. Then you eat in relative silence, everyone focused on filling their stomachs before the food cools and becomes even less palatable. Mr. Grimshaw's raised the rent again, Mother says quietly, breaking the silence. Mrs. Murphy told me, extra shilling a month starting January. Your spoon pauses halfway to your mouth. An extra shilling might as well be an extra pound. But that's... We can't... I know. Mother's voice is flat, emotionless. She's had too many years of practice at receiving bad news. We'll manage. Always do. Here's a quirky fact that's not quirky at all when you're living it. Victorian landlords often raise rents in winter. Knowing families couldn't move during the cold months, it was economic hostage-taking, perfectly legal and perfectly cruel. Pay or freeze, your choice. I could take in more piecework. Mother continues, though her twisted fingers can barely hold a needle anymore. Or maybe the twins are old enough for the match factory. No! The word explodes from you before you can stop it. The twins are 10. The match factory means phossy jaw, means yellow fingers, means death by 25. I'll find something. Maybe take in washing on Sundays. Your one day of rest. Your one day to wash your own clothes. To sleep past dawn. To pretend you're human. But what choice is there? The arithmetic of poverty always comes out negative, no matter how you juggle the numbers. Father suddenly lurches upright, knocking over his gin bottle. The precious liquid spreads across the floor, and he howls like a wounded animal. Me gin, you clumsy bitches. Look what you've done. Nobody had touched his bottle, but pointing that out would only make things worse. He staggers toward Mother, fist raised, and you quickly step between them. It's all right. Father, I'll get you another tomorrow, another shilling you don't have. But it's better than watching him take his rage out on Mother again. He glares at you with bloodshot eyes, then stumbles back to his chair, muttering curses. The twins huddle closer together, and Mary starts that wet cough again. Historians still argue whether alcoholism was a cause or effect of Victorian poverty. Living here, watching your father dissolve into gin while your mother ages a year each month. You know it's both. Poverty drives you to drink, and drink drives you deeper into poverty. It's a wheel that crushes everyone. It rolls over, after supper, such as it was. You help clear the table. The leftover soup, mostly water now, will be tomorrow's breakfast with some stale bread soaked in it. Nothing is wasted here. Even the potato peelings will go to Mrs. Chen's pig that she illegally keeps in the courtyard. I'll do the washing up. You tell Mother. Her hands are shaking with exhaustion. You've been working all day. So have you. You gently take the dishes from her. Rest, please. She doesn't argue further, sinking into the one comfortable chair, comfortable being relative, as it only has 3 broken springs instead of 5. The twins help you carry the dishes to the courtyard pump, where you'll wash them in water cold enough to make your hands numb. But that's later. For now, you allow yourself one moment to stand still, to breathe, to exist without rushing to the next task. Through the thin walls, you hear the sounds of your neighbours, arguments, crying babies, someone singing a sad Irish ballad, the symphony of the slums, playing every night. No admission charged. By 9 o'clock, exhaustion weighs on you like a physical presence. Your eyes burn from the strain of sewing by candlelight, and every muscle screams for rest. But first, evening ablutions, if you can call splashing freezing water on your face and hands ablutions. The middle classes have washstands and rose-scented soap. You have a cracked basin and lye soap that takes off dirt and skin in equal measure. The sleeping arrangements require negotiation. 1 bed, 5 people. Not counting Father, who'll spend the night in his chair. You and the twins share the mattress with Mother, while Mary gets the straw pallet on the floor. Better for her cough, Mother claims, though you suspect it's really because the little ones kick in their sleep. And tell us a story, Sarah whispers as you all huddle under the thin blankets, about somewhere warm, somewhere clean. Anne adds, somewhere with food. Mary calls from her pallet. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian bedtime stories often contained moral lessons. What historians miss is that for poor children, The greatest fantasy wasn't dragons or princes, it was basic comfort. A full stomach was more magical than any fairy tale. Once upon a time. You begin. There was a country where the sun always shone, and orange trees grew right in the streets. You spin tales of impossible plenty, while the rats scratch in the walls and someone upstairs has a coughing fit that goes on for minutes. Your father snores in his chair, gin-soaked and dead to the world. Outside, London never sleeps. Horse hooves clatter on cobblestones. Distant shouts echo from the pubs. And somewhere a woman screams, whether in fear or anger. You can't tell and don't want to know. Here's something quirky. Victorian poor often slept in shifts, with family members taking turns in the bed. Hot bedding. They called it. You worked nights, someone else worked days, and the bed never got cold. Maximum efficiency, minimum comfort. Your family's lucky to all sleep at the same time, even if it means playing human Jenga, just as you're drifting off. It starts. Mary's cough. Worse than before. Not the dry hack of cotton lung, but something wet and rattling. She tries to muffle it in her thin pillow, but soon she's gasping for breath between spasms. Sit her up, Mother says. Instantly awake, you light the candle with shaking fingers, while Mother props Mary against the wall. In the flickering light, you see spots of blood on the pillow. Your heart sinks. It's nothing. Mary wheezes. Just need water. You fetch water, knowing it won't help. This is how it started with your brother James. First the cough, then the blood, then the wasting. Consumption, the doctors call it. As if giving it a fancy name makes it less deadly. The White Death. Everyone else calls it, and that's more honest. Should we fetch the doctor? Anne asks in a small voice. Historians still argue whether Victorian medical care was better than nothing. For the poor, it was often worse. Doctors cost money you don't have, prescribe medicines you can't afford, and recommend treatments, fresh air, good food, rest that might as well be fairy tales. The charity hospital might see her in a week, if she lives that long. We'll try Mrs. O'Brien's remedy first, Mother says firmly. Mrs. O'Brien brews a concoction of gin, honey, and herbs that at least helps children sleep through the coughing. It won't cure anything, but sometimes comfort is all you can offer. You volunteer to fetch it, partly to help, and partly to escape the sound of Mary struggling to breathe. The hallway is dark, and you navigate by memory, and the faint light seeping under doors. Mrs. O'Brien answers your knock in her nightdress, takes one look at your face, and knows. The little one? You nod, not trusting your voice. Wait here. She returns with a brown bottle, 2 spoons every 4 hours, and she presses something else into your hand, a rosary. Can't hurt. Back in your room, Mary takes the medicine without complaint. It smells like Christmas and tastes like fire. But within minutes, her breathing eases slightly. You settle back into bed, but sleep won't come. Instead, you lie awake counting Mary's ragged breaths, the coins you'll need for medicine, the days until rent is due, the ways this life slowly kills you all. Through the wall, someone's baby cries. Above, footsteps pace endlessly. Below, a door slams. The building is a living thing, breathing misery and exhaling despair, and you're trapped inside its lungs, waiting for dawn and another day exactly like this one. Around midnight, your bladder makes its urgent demands known. You've been holding it for hours, dreading this moment, but nature won't be denied. The chamber pot is full. Someone forgot to empty it this evening, which means a trip to the privy. In December, at midnight, your favorite thing, you slip out of bed carefully. Trying not to wake the others, Mary's breathing has settled into a wet wheeze. The medicine doing its work, you wrap your shawl around your shoulders and grab the candle. Then think better of it. Candles cost money, and you know the way by feel. Besides, sometimes darkness is a mercy. The floorboards creak under your bare feet as you navigate to the door. In the hallway, other night wanderers shuffle past, insomniacs, drunks, and fellow prisoners of their bladders. Nobody makes eye contact. There's an unspoken code about midnight privy runs. We're all human. We all have bodies. Let's pretend we don't. The stairs are treacherous in the dark. You grip the banister, testing each step before committing your weight to. The wood is greasy, with years of unwashed hands, and something squelches under your foot on the second landing. You don't investigate. Some knowledge isn't worth having. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian sanitation was primitive. What they don't capture is the full sensory horror of a shared privy serving 40 families. The smell hits you before you even open the courtyard door. A thick, choking miasma that makes your eyes water. You breathe through your mouth, though that just means you taste it instead. The privy is a wooden shack with 6 holes cut in a bench, separated by thin partitions that don't quite reach the floor or ceiling. Privacy is theoretical. The holes lead to a cesspit that hasn't been emptied in God knows how long. In summer, the flies are so thick you can hear them before you see them. In winter, at least, they're dormant. Small mercies. Here's a quirky detail that's only funny if you don't have to live it. Some Victorian privies had modesty boards, angled wooden shields that supposedly preserved feminine dignity while you did your business. In reality, they just gave the spiders somewhere to build webs at face height. Nothing says dignity like fighting off arachnids while answering nature's call. You pick the least offensive hole, a relative term, and try not to think about what's below, or about the very real possibility of falling through rotten wood. Just last month, old Mr. Peterson from the second floor went right through. They pulled him out alive but covered in, well, he hasn't been quite right in the head since. Business completed as quickly as humanly possible. You emerge gasping into the relatively fresh air of the courtyard. Relatively fresh, meaning it only smells of rotting garbage and industrial smoke instead of human waste. You're halfway to the door when you hear it, crying, soft and muffled, coming from the corner by the ash bins. You hesitate. Getting involved in other people's misery is dangerous, but the crying continues. And it sounds young, too young, against your better judgment. You investigate it. It's the Patterson girl, Lily, huddled behind the bins, 14 years old, still in her factory dress. And even in the darkness, you can see the bruises on her face. You don't need to ask what happened. You've seen this before. We'll see it again. Come on, you say softly, helping her up. Let's get you cleaned up. She follows you wordlessly to the pump. The water is icy, but she doesn't flinch as you help her wash the blood from her lip. Historians still argue about the extent of violence against Victorian women. Standing here with Lily, watching her trembling hands try to straighten her torn collar. You don't need statistics. Every woman in this building has a story. Most have several. Was it... you don't finish the question. The overlooker, she whispers, said I was working too slow, said he'd teach me to be faster. You know exactly what kind of lesson he taught. The same one they all teach when they catch a girl alone. Your hands clench into fists. But what can you do? Report him? The factory owners will just fire Lily for moral turpitude. The police? They'll laugh. Violence? That just gets Lily's father arrested and the family evicted. Stay with us tonight. You offer. We'll figure something out in the morning. But you both know there's nothing to figure out. Tomorrow she'll go back to the factory, back to the overlooker, back to pretending nothing happened, because the alternative is starvation. The arithmetic of survival doesn't include justice. You guide her inside. Two shadows moving through a world that devours girls like Lily whole and spits out their bones. Your bladder is empty, but your heart is heavier than when you left in. Back in your room, you settle Lily on the floor near Mary. Giving her your portion of the blanket, she curls into a ball, still trembling, and you lie awake listening to the symphony of breathing around you. Mother's steady rhythm, the twins' synchronized snores, Mary's wet rattle, and now Lily's hiccuping sobs that she's trying so hard to suppress. The clock at St. Mary's chimes 2. In 2.5 hours, you'll need to be up again. Your body begs for sleep, but your mind races. Rent due, Mary's medicine, father's gin, now Lily to worry about. The mental arithmetic never stops. Numbers dancing behind your eyelids like mathematical demons. 7 shillings a week -3 for rent, -1 for food, minus a crash from upstairs, followed by screaming. The Flanagans are at it again. He drinks. She drinks. They fight. Someone bleeds. The constable comes. Nothing changes. Last week she threw a chamber pot at his head, missed him, hit the wall, and the contents leaked through your ceiling for days. You pull the thin pillow over your head, trying to block out the noise. Through the walls comes the sound of someone retching, a baby crying, bed springs creaking in a rhythm you try not to think about. Privacy is a luxury none of you can afford. You know every detail of your neighbors' lives, and they know yours. It's like living in a beehive. If bees were miserable and drunk, the mainstream historical fact is that Victorian slums were overcrowded. What that doesn't convey is the psychological torture of never being alone, never having quiet, never having space to think or breathe or exist as an individual. You're always performing for an audience, even when that audience is just the family of 10 squeezed into the room next door. Sleep, when it finally comes, brings no relief. You dream of the factory, of threads that turn into snakes, of shuttles that chase you through endless rooms of machinery. And in your dream, you're naked except for your factory apron, and everyone is laughing. You try to run, but your feet are stuck in molasses that look suspiciously like the soup from dinner. You wake with a gasp at 4:15, 15 minutes before you need to rise, better than oversleeping. But now, you have 15 minutes to lie here dreading the day ahead. Beside you, Mother is already awake, staring at the ceiling with the 1,000-yard stare of someone calculating impossible sums. Lily, she whispers, Patterson's girl, had trouble at the factory. Mother nods. She doesn't need details. She can help with the piecework today. Keep her here. Here's a quirky, historical detail. Victorian peace workers often operated informal safe houses for girls in trouble, not out of organized feminism, but from basic human decency and the knowledge that tomorrow it could be your daughter bleeding behind the ash bins. Sisterhood born of suffering. The clock chimes 4:30. Time to start again. You extract yourself from the bed, trying not to wake the others. Your dress from yesterday waits on its hook, stiff and reeking. You'll wear it again today, and tomorrow, and the day after. Maybe Sunday you can wash it. If there's soap money. Lily stirs as you move past. I should go, she whispers. Stay. You insist. Mother will put you to work. Safer here. Safer being relative. But at least here, the only violence is poverty's slow strangulation. Not the immediate brutality of overseers with wandering hands. She nods, tears fresh on her cheeks. And you remember being 14 and thinking life had to get better. Now at 19, you know better. Life doesn't get better. You just get better at surviving it. Historians still argue whether the Victorian era was a time of progress or exploitation. Standing here in your stinking dress, preparing for another 14-hour shift, knowing Lily's innocence was destroyed for the crime of working too slowly. You have your answer. Progress for whom? Certainly not for the girls ground up in the machinery of empire. Mary coughs in her sleep. And you add another worry to your collection. The brown bottle of medicine is nearly empty. Mrs. O'Brien will make more. But she'll want payment eventually. Everything costs. Even kindness comes with a price tag in the slums. You splash your face with yesterday's water, now skimmed with ice and dust. Your reflection in the cracked mirror looks ghostly in the pre-dawn darkness. When did you become this hollow-eyed spectre? When did surviving become the only goal? The factory whistle will sound soon. Time to don your armor of exhaustion and face another day. You look back at your sleeping family, at broken Lily, at dying Mary, at mother aging by the hour. This is your kingdom of rags and sorrow, and tomorrow will be exactly the same. Except you'll all be one day closer to the grave. The clock strikes 4:45, and you know this cycle will repeat endlessly. Tomorrow you'll wake in the same freezing darkness, dress in the same rotting clothes, eat the same watery gruel, and trudge to the same factory where the machines wait like hungry gods demanding sacrifice. Your fingers will bleed, your back will scream, your lungs will fill with cotton dust. And for what? 4 shillings and 9pence if you're lucky. Less if the overseer finds excuses to dock your wages. You think about Lily, huddled on your floor, another casualty of a system that chews up girls and spits out ghosts. You think about Mary, coughing blood into rags, consumption eating her from the inside while you count pennies for medicine that won't save her. You think about your mother, fingers twisted from years of sewing, taking in piecework that pays starvation wages because starvation wages are better than no wages at all. This is your life. This will always be your life. The mainstream historical fact is that Victorian England was the richest nation on earth. What they don't tell you is that its wealth was built on the bones of girls like you, ground into dust by the great machine of progress. You're not living in the world's most advanced civilization. You're trapped in its engine room, shoveling coal into furnaces that power other people's dreams. You pull on your shawl, feet finding their way into split boots, outside your window. London prepares for another day of devouring its children. The factory whistles haven't sounded yet, but already the streets fill with bent figures shuffling toward their daily crucifixion. You'll join them soon. Another anonymous soldier in the army of the damned. Here's the quirky truth nobody mentions. Some girls choose the Thames instead. A quick jump from London Bridge, they say, and all your troubles are over. The river police fish out 3 or 4 factory girls a week, pockets weighted with stones, faces finally peaceful. You understand the temptations. When every day is torture and every night brings new horrors, the black water starts looking like salvation. But not today. Today you'll go to work because Mary needs medicine, and mother needs help, and even father, poisoned by gin and bitterness, needs the roof you help keep over his head. You'll endure because endurance is the only skill poverty teaches that matters. You'll survive because the alternative leaves your family with 1 less pair of hands, 1 less wage, 1 less buffer between them and the workhouse. The truth is carved into your bones now. You probably won't make it to 30. Factory work, childbirth, disease, violence, exhaustion. Something will claim you long before old age gets its chance. You've already outlived 2 siblings. Statistics say you'll outlive 2 more before your own turn comes. That's not pessimism, it's mathematics. But here's what the historians and their arguments miss. You'll keep going anyway, not from hope. Hope is a luxury you can't afford. Not from faith. God seems to have forgotten your postal code. You'll keep going from pure, stubborn, working-class spite, because every day you survive is a tiny rebellion against a world designed to kill you. Every breath is resistance. Every step is revolution. You're about to open the door when Mary calls out weakly, "Sarah, will you come home tonight?" Always. You lie, because what else can you say? That one day you'll leave for work and never return. That the machines are hungry and eventually they'll eat you too. That every goodbye could be the last. Promise? Promise. Historians still argue about whether the Industrial Revolution improved lives. Standing here, making promises you might not keep to a dying child. You don't need their debates. You're living their footnotes, bleeding their statistics, breathing their data points. You are the price of progress, paid daily in blood and bone and souls ground finer than cotton fiber. The door closes behind you with a soft click. In a few hours, the sun will rise, but you won't see it through the factory windows. Somewhere, rich women are just going to bed after glittering parties. Their biggest worry, which dress to wear tomorrow. Somewhere, men in Parliament debate the problem of the working poor, as if you're a mathematical equation to be solved, rather than human beings being slowly murdered by poverty. But that's somewhere else. Here, in the dark streets of Whitechapel, you put one foot in front of the other and walk toward another day of survival. The factory whistle sounds, calling you to worship at the altar of industrial capitalism. You quicken your pace, can't be late, can't lose wages, can't stop moving, because stopping means dying, and dying means failing everyone who depends on you, so you'll live another day, even if living feels like the cruelest punishment of all. The soft hush of night is giving way to the harsh cacophony of dawn. But I want you to know that you've witnessed something profound tonight. The quiet heroism of those who history forgot. As you drift toward sleep, let the rhythm of your own breath remind you how precious and fragile life can be. These women who trudged through darkness, who bled for pennies, who loved fiercely despite having nothing. They were the true architects of our modern world. Their names are lost, but their sacrifice echoes through time. Rest now, and be gentle with yourself tomorrow, because every dawn you greet is a gift they could only dream of. Close your eyes and let gratitude wrap around you, like the warm blanket those factory girls never had. Sweet dreams. And remember, you are living the better tomorrow they died believing in.